Okay, so I'll go ahead and start the broadcast, and then it'll be on. Okay. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Andrew Deaver, and I'm the marketing manager here at Mozenda. Let me make sure that I've got this set up properly here. Can everyone see the presentation here? Okay, good. All right. Well, today we'll be covering the basics of premium harvesting, and then we're going to take some time for questions. Now, remember, if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and type them in as we go along, and we'll circle back to them during the Q&A. And at that time, I'll be joined by Chris Curtis, our lead engineer on this project. And after this event is over, we'll post the recording on our website later for on-demand viewing. All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. So first thing to start off with, we want to make it clear that premium harvesting is replacing anonymous processing. If anyone here is unfamiliar with why we have this feature in the first place, it forces an agent's request to originate from a specified location. So this is required in certain cases where high demand websites will require extra processing, and it can also be used as a convenient workaround for other websites, and we'll cover that a little bit later on. So although premium harvesting accomplishes the same goal as anonymous processing, we've also used it to introduce some important new features that we're really excited about. So these features include using a consistent number of page credits during processing, geolocation features, and the ability to use those geolocation features in the agent builder. Let's go ahead and cover these in just a little bit of detail. So first off is the usage ratio. If you're familiar with anonymous processing, it would use different numbers depending on a variety of factors, including the location that was being used, what type of website, and so on. So we've standardized this to be a 3-to-1 ratio. So on normal websites where you just have regular processing, once premium harvesting is enabled, then it will use 3 page credits to 1. So what we hoped for in that case is that it will make it easier to predict your agent usage and also forecast budget considerations for more high volume accounts. Next, we've got the geolocation. So in plain English, geolocation allows you to reroute web requests through another country or region. Now, up until this point, our engineers were manually setting up these agents to send traffic through other locations, which would both require time on our part as well as patience from our users while this setting was configured. And so with this release, we've empowered our users to actually accomplish this by themselves within just seconds. Let me go ahead and show how that works. I'll open up a sample agent here. And so, as usual, you have your harvesting settings, and when a normal agent is set up here, you go and switch that to premium harvesting. And then you can select the region that you want to access a website from in this drop-down right here. And once you've selected a region or a country, an area, go ahead and select Save. And it's as simple as that. So anytime your agent runs from here on out, the traffic will be routed through that location. Next, I'll show you how this works in the agent builder. If you've used the agent builder since last Friday's release, you'll have noticed that we've also included a way to control the setting directly through there. Let me go ahead and show how that works here. Now here's a sample that I'll go through in a little bit more detail later. So hotels.com, it's loading right now, and once it comes up here in a second, you'll see the area here where you control whether or not premium harvesting is enabled, as well as the location that it's running through. Now, we found that this is really an important feature for users who basically are trying to gather data from a website that's locked to a specific region, because that complicates things during processing and can also require workarounds to actually build the agent in the first place. And so this change has resolved many of those issues. So what you have here is a switch. Basically, it's on right now. So I can actually turn that off so that it loads the website directly. And it'll take a moment to load here. But when you have it toggled on, then you can also just choose from a menu right here that will also change the location that it's coming from. So let me go ahead and switch that back on with a new location. Let's try Germany. And once I switch that back on, it's actually going to immediately reload that page using the new location, sending those web requests through that location. And so you'll see a number of different changes here. The most immediate is that the language is completely different. It reflects the new location, and the content has been updated entirely. So let's just go ahead and try one more location once this loads. And this is one thing that you'll notice is that using the premium harvesting and geolocation in the agent builder, there is a little bit of a trade-off because those web requests are routing through another location. It requires additional hops and will require a little bit more time on the website. And so it may be necessary to add in more wait seconds for the web page to load and things like that you might encounter. Let's go ahead and switch this over to, let's say, Saudi Arabia. Okay, so we have a lot of similar changes here. Got the new locale being detected, a completely different language, and also a different layout. And so, hopefully this does a good job of showing exactly what you can do with this new feature and some of the use cases. One of the examples that came up recently with one of our users was the manufacturer who wanted to keep tabs on how its various products were being portrayed in different markets. And of course, one of the most obvious examples is websites that are blocked in certain areas. So the geolocation feature makes it possible to view and extract content that would otherwise be unavailable without elaborate workarounds. So let's go ahead and summarize, what this means for you. So here are some takeaways from what this new feature means. So first, the new pricing model will make it easier to understand how many page credits will be used by an agent and plan for that, along with improving the capacity and capability of our infrastructure to accommodate our users' needs and streamlining the pricing and putting those tools in the hands of our customers. The service has become a lot more scalable and easier to implement. So lastly, premium harvesting lays the foundation for other possible features that we'll be considering in the future, including device emulation, browser session handling, as well as others. And so, that about covers it. Now we'll go ahead and switch over to a Q&A, and I'll have Chris join us so that we can answer any questions that you have. And as a reminder, go ahead and type your questions into the question box in the control panel so that we can see and respond to them. Are you with us, Chris?
I am. Yep. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay. Great. Thanks for joining us. Okay. It looks like at the moment we've just got the one question. Let me go ahead and read that off here. does the premium harvesting mean that specialized proxy pools that are currently a ratio of 7-to-1 will become 3-to-1? Can you chime in on that, Chris?
Yeah, the answer is yes. So we made this release as backwards compatible as we could, and so existing configuration on some specific agents that we had worked with customers before to set up special anonymous processing configuration, that will, for the most part, stay intact until the customer manually goes and changes that configuration to use the new geolocation settings. But the answer is yes. There is no reason why those couldn't be migrated to using the new geolocation and premium harvesting paradigm. And once that is done, it will use a 3-to-1 ratio instead of whatever the previous configuration was.
Okay, great. All right, next question. I think you'll be best equipped to handle this one. To what extent do the revisions to harvesting features mean that we can run multiple worker threads at once? In other words, to harvest faster?
So that's a great question. Part of the vision in this whole premium harvesting feature set was to give a greater number of our users the ability to concurrently get data from high demand websites. And so to accomplish that, we've taken a lot of time and effort to try to create a very robust distributed processing network throughout the entire world. That provides several benefits. One of which is the ability to allow more concurrent processing against a given domain. Another would be the ability to have more continuity with your agents and knowing that, you know, tomorrow or the next day that they are going to continue to be able to run in the same way because of this vast and robust network that's been created. And so the answer is yeah, we've definitely increased for, you know, it's a delicate balance because Mozenda will never allow customers to overburden a website. We have strict controls in place to detect to the best of our ability what a website can handle, and we want to do our best to blend in with the normal looking traffic of a website. And you know, the whole goal of Mozenda is to be a tool that looks just like a user to a website when we are extracting data from it. And so the goal here is to continue to do that with as many concurrent jobs running against these domains as possible without overburdening any website on the internet. And this new distributed proxy network that has been created will achieve just that. It will allow for domains that can handle more processing without disrupting their service at all to have more Mozenda agents running against them concurrently.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. So next question is, and I think I can handle this one. If we use premium harvesting, will the agent use more page credits than normal harvesting or not? Let me go ahead and backtrack in the presentation a little bit. We have the standardized the usage ratio. So in normal cases where a regular agent processing normally will use 1 page credit, enabling premium harvesting, whether or not you use the geolocation feature and choose a different location, it will use 3 page credits in place of 1. Anything to add to that, Chris?
No, that is right. It's any time that Mozenda either determines that you must use premium harvesting because the domain is in high demand, or you optionally select premium harvesting as your method for your agent, you will be charged the 3-to-1 ratio for any agents that run, for any jobs that run. And one thing I failed to mention, I thought I wanted to allude to in my last response to the previous question was that one question customers might have is, why would I choose one geolocation over another? And the answer to that is that you generally want to run your agent or choose a geolocation that is as geographically large as possible, because that allows Mozenda to harness more of its distributed network for fulfilling that job. So for example, if you choose Saudi Arabia as your geolocation, then all of the requests have to go through that particular geolocation. But if you were to choose Asia or Europe or North America, or if you opt to use the world region, which really is just literally all of our distributed networks combined throughout the world, then there's more capacity available for any given domain, because there's more distributed capacity available on our backend to fulfill those requests. So hopefully that gives you a little better idea. Obviously, the other main benefit is that sometimes you would, for business use case, you'd want to see what happens to a particular website from a specific geolocation, a certain country, and so you might want to choose a very specific country or the website requires it. But if that's not the case, then generally you'll want to choose a larger geographical area just to ensure that Mozenda is able to use all of its distributed networks to process as many jobs concurrently as possible in that particular domain.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, here's a follow-up to that question. Let's see. As they come in, they get bumped up. Okay, if several agents run at the same time to collect information from the same website, will that block the website?
No, so that's one of the, on our back-end infrastructure, again, that's maybe, why you can start to see that there is an incurred premium to using this premium harvesting feature, is because we've taken the time to set up a nice, robust network that many of our customers can use concurrently. And so unless a particular website will be overburdened by many concurrent jobs running against that domain in Mozenda system, barring that specific case, in general, Mozenda can handle many more concurrent jobs against any given website because it has a much larger network of distributed servers to process those jobs now.
Okay. Next question. Do you need to build different agents for each location that you choose? I think the short answer here is yes, because you're not able to programmatically switch between those locations. There's no action in the action list when building an agent builder. I suppose the thing that you might be able to answer though, Chris, is that being considered, and maybe is it possible through our API? Can you chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to run the same agent concurrently in multiple geolocations, then you have two options. One, well, if you want to run them concurrently, you really have one option, and that is that we are doing our final testing on an additional API parameter that would allow those customers that use our REST API to specify when they create a job for an agent or run a job that they want to specify a specific geolocation. And so that would be the answer for anyone using the API. For those customers that are not using the API, if they don't need to run concurrently, then they can run an agent with a particular geolocation, and then once that agent is done, they can change the geolocation to anywhere else and click the run button again, and it will use that new geolocation. Obviously, if you change the geolocation from the web console, you may want to do a quick check in the agent builder to make sure that that is going to continue to work based on the new geolocation you've selected. But in general, you can run an agent with a particular geolocation and then switch the geolocation, run it again, and as long as the website behaves correctly, regardless of what geolocation it comes from, it should work fine. And in that case, you might be able to detect content changes or pricing changes or other changes that the website has as a result of that changing geolocation.
Okay, good. Next question. Do these features make any change to the ability or fluidity of Mozenda getting around sites' IP-based bans during harvesting?
Yes, that is one of the benefits to this distributed processing network, is that we have many more IPs to rotate through, and we have algorithms in our process that try to minimize the number of times that a particular website will be reached or requested from any given specific IP. And so the distributed network that we've created definitely gives more capacity, and part of that capacity, or one of the things that makes it have more capacity, is the fact that there's many more IPs in its rotation.
Okay, next question. When using geolocation, will the Use My Location buttons work? For example, when searching a store locator for a retail, when you hit Use My Location, will the store locator map zoom in?
The answer to that question is it depends, and it would be site. It would be site by site to look at. In general, I would say yes. I've used most sites like we just looked at with Hotels.com, that most sites, even with their locator, are going to use the IP address of the requester, the person making the request, or in this case, our servers making the request, to determine the location of the individual or the browser. There is a few other ways that websites could detect that, and depending on how that's done, it may or may not be completely successful, and we'd have to look at those on a case-by-case basis. If you have a particular website that is not working or not behaving the way you're expecting, please do contact our support department. We'd be happy to take a look at it.
Okay. Next is someone that hasn't done anonymous harvesting before. Does that mean that the target website will not be able to track where the harvesting is coming from? And I think part of your last response covers that, but do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a very basic sense, for those users of ours that aren't really maybe highly familiar with how the internet works on a technical level, there is what's called an IP address, which, in a simplistic world, you can think of it as a physical address for a computer. Just like you have a physical address for a location on a map, there's a physical address for where a computer is making a request from. And that's what most websites in the world use to do two things. They use to see if the same person with the same IP address is making many requests, and they also use it to determine where that person is located. So you'll see that, for instance, on some websites in the US, Netflix and I think Hulu and some of these other ones, they use, for an example, they use your IP address to determine if you're located in the United States when you go to use their services. And so to further answer your question, the fact that we have a distributed network of many servers around the world in many of these geolocations, and the fact that we are constantly, generally, I guess another way of answering this is generally every time that your agent loads a new page in its agent, it will be rotating the IP address that it is using to access that website. And so because we use different websites for almost every page request, it becomes much more difficult for a website to determine that the same user is accessing the site many times.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. So the anonymous option is gone, and if so, with premium harvesting, let's see. Let me make sure that I understand how this question is going. So with premium harvesting, can you change the location as the agent runs, like for websites that limit the number of searches based on your location?
Yeah, so I think that was mostly answered by the last question. So let's just hypothetically talk about an agent that maybe has a data list of search terms that it's searching on a particular website. Every time it does sets a value into a search box and then clicks on a search button and it loads a new page in your agent, every time it does that, it would be using a different IP address to fulfill that request, and therefore it should allow you to do a large number of those requests without having any trouble of being blocked or anything like that from the website.
Okay. Can you provide an estimate for how large the proxy pool is for certain regions like the U.S.?
We work with lots of providers. We have lots of our own servers, and it's something that's constantly changing. It's something we monitor to try to make sure that we have enough capacity to fulfill the jobs, the agents that our customers are running. At this point, we're not prepared to really give out the exact numbers of how many IPs are in every location, but I can confidently say that if you use any of the regions that are in the geolocations list, that they have many, many IPs that we are confident, hopefully, in almost all cases, would be sufficient to fulfill any normal project that we have seen.
Good. Next question is, suppose there are some sites that many of your customers want scraped frequently. Do you plan to have unified harvesting that you can run once and then syndicate the resulting data to all your users who want it?
That's something that not exactly in line with the topic that we're discussing, but I will say that just in general, that is a subject that's been brought up by several customers, where several customers end up wanting the same data sets, and it's something that our sales team and our business development team is looking at very seriously. And so, if you are interested in that, or feel like there is some benefit or certain domains that you can see that being useful, please do reach out to our sales team and ask them those questions, and they'd be probably better equipped than I would to be able to give you a good response about that.
And I think, even part of our website, if you visit our services section, we've actually started promoting our data feed that, basically you'd still have to reach out to our sales department to see how that works, if that falls in line with what you're looking for. But they are considering other places to branch out to, but that was one that immediately stood out. Lots of our users are, looking for those, job postings and things like that. So that is one of those, common things that we have started pursuing. Next question is, when I go to a French website, the date format is different from an English website. If I don't use geolocation, Mozenda may not recognize the date or, call an error. And will premium harvesting solve this problem?
Let me try to guess, I guess, at what we're trying to get at here. It is definitely true that websites can change the way they display dates and times based on the geolocation you're coming from, and I would fully expect that the dates and times that they would display on their website for any sites that are used to international traffic would be displayed based on the time zone that the customer, where they think the customer is coming from. And so I guess in some way, I guess you could say geolocation would solve that. Because today, before premium harvesting was released, if you were an international customer and you were designing an agent on a website and it happened to be doing that, it would be using your local computing resources to access the website always, and you might be seeing, and so it would detect that you were coming from a different geolocation than Mozenda's harvesting cloud would be coming from. And so there could be discrepancies between what the website returned as far as content when it ran in Mozenda's harvesting cloud versus when it was being built and tested and verified in the agent builder. One of the great benefits and purposes of the premium harvesting feature set was to try to remove that barrier and make it a comparable and similar process when you're working in the agent builder, so that it was consistent between the set of IPs that or the geolocation that a particular website would detect you were from. It would be the same when you were in the agent builder versus when it was running on Mozenda's harvesting cloud. And so if you're ever running into those kinds of problems, then definitely using premium harvesting will allow you to overcome those, because it'll allow you to use a geolocation in the agent builder, specify a location, and that same geolocation will be used when it's run in the harvesting cloud, so that it will be consistent between building, testing, and running your agent.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like this question also addresses the date format, and I think that mostly has to do with the capture action. Exactly, how is it trying to identify that it's a date? If it's a regular expression in different languages, it may require some adjustments in order to just ensure that you're actually capturing the proper date, as opposed to it throwing an error.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. If a particular website, I would say that a lot of Mozenda's, like for instance, there is some auto detection date capabilities inside of Mozenda, and those generally work well for well-recognized date formats that are kind of the standard in the U.S. We haven't branched out and made that entirely robust for lots of international date regions and formats that you may encounter, and so some more specific regular expressions and parsing is generally required to parse those kinds of dates. And if you run into any trouble trying to get that to work consistently, I know our support department has helped a lot with those cases and can can definitely help you out.
Okay. It looks like we're on the last question, and if anything hasn't been answered to your liking, or if you'd like to dig in a little deeper, feel free to send in any other last-minute questions here. Um, will geolocation take more time than the normal harvesting for data collection?
It will, if you've been using anonymous processing already, then it should take comparably about the same amount of time, because it was already using distributed proxy networks throughout the world to fulfill those requests. If your agents were not using premium harvesting before, or excuse me, anonymous processing before, then I could see that agents may take slightly longer to process, which is actually a good lead into one thing I don't think that we fully covered yet. Andrew, do you have the agent builder still available on your screen that you could show for just a moment?
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to just show briefly is you'll see that there's a premium harvesting tools button in the top right-hand corner. And if you want to click on that, Andrew, right now this really just has this will probably ultimately have a lot more configuration and settings in here. But for right now, for many of you, this might look a bit daunting, and that's okay. You generally won't have to do this, but for those users that are power users or are trying to fine-tune their agents to be as efficient as possible, these are a set of regular expressions that will help Mozenda to understand which requests that a particular website is making need to actually go through this certain geolocation versus those that do not. And the benefit to that is that those that do not need to be routed, if you've set your geolocation to be in Saudi Arabia, but you're actually in the United States or in Europe, then those requests have to take a much different route to get to the website and get back, and that takes a lot longer to fulfill. And so those particular resources on a website page, like for instance the images and some of the font files and some of the other resources that are loaded to make a website operate, in general, a lot of that content doesn't need to be routed through a particular geolocation for the website to still function completely, perfectly normal as you would expect. And so in those cases, you may find that you want to come in and either add to this list or slightly modify this list of expressions to be more accurate based on the particular website and domain you're working with. And I will say that for existing agents, this would be something important for all existing customers that have agents that have been running in the past and that now are going to start using premium harvesting. When you reopen these agents, when you first come into this list, because we didn't want to potentially introduce some kind of behavior that would affect your processing, this list will be empty. And so that means every request is trying to go through that geolocation, and that's why in the agent builder you may see it behaving more slowly than you would anticipate. And one thing that will help with that is to go and click that button that says Set to Defaults right there. And then that will immediately bring all of Mozenda's defaults down that we give to all new agents going forward. And then you can save those and then save your agent. And that will also improve the processing speed at which your agents run.
Okay, good. And we got one more question that rolled in here. Some of the sites we want to harvest require a username and password, which of course they have. How would premium harvesting work in that case?
So that's a great question. Premium harvesting is kind of an independent feature from this question. There's two separate things going on here. One is the IP address or the location that a website thinks you're coming from, and another one is whether or not you've authenticated and have a session on a particular website. So, it will still work perfectly fine to have a username and password as part of your agent, as it has before, and running with premium harvesting should just work just fine. But the caution here is that whenever you have a username and a password and you're logging into a website, that website obviously now knows who you are. And so no matter what geolocation your requests are routed through or from, they still can identify you by your user account on their website. And so it is much more likely that they'll still be able to see that you are making a large number of requests. For instance, if you're logging into a website and And even if you're using premium harvesting, yes, the request may be originating from a different geolocation. It still isn't going to do anything to solve the problem or help in the fact that they still know who you are based on your user account.
Okay, great. Well, that about covers the questions that have come in so far. So if anyone still has questions, feel free to reach out to our support. And I want to thank Chris for his time and your hard work on this. I know it was yeah, a while in the making, but I think that we can see the benefits and just how useful this feature is, and how important it is that it's now in the hands of our users. And if you have any other questions or need assistance with implementing this or have other questions, give us a call or send an email to support@mozenda.com. And thanks for joining us, everyone, and thanks again, Chris.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Goodbye, everyone.